Welcome to What the Actual Dev, the no bullshit development podcast.
No fluff, no marketing, just honest conversations, practical insights, and expert advice from developers who've been in the trenches.
My name is Aaron.
And I'm Bryan.
Let's dive deep into the human aspects of the software industry
and support each other on this journey.
All right, welcome to What the Actual Dev. We're here with Dr. Nick McGehee. We're going to talk about learning in the dev industry. So, Nick, you want to give us a little info about you and kind of how you got in the industry?
Yeah, so I kind of have an alternative path into the industry. So have a lot of formal education, which is different than a lot of people working in tech. A lot of people have certifications or have gone through alternative pathways, whereas my pathway was extremely formal, which makes it alternative in this field. um, However, I actually have a lot of formal education in education. So originally, I went to a very rural education system growing up, and then at one point my family moved to Florida. I was way behind in school, and I caught up while I was there, and then we moved back to where I was originally from, and I didn't learn anything new in school for about 2 years. Uh, Yeah, like I went to Florida and I learned Algebra 1. And so I moved back and I was in the seventh grade and I didn't learn anything new till I was a sophomore. So it was pretty rough. And I decided then that uh, I wanted to change stuff like that. So I got into the field of education, but I had a passion for science and research, and so I was a science educator. And once I started teaching, I realized that there was only so much that I could do as a classroom teacher, and so I pursued my education to the terminal degree. Got a couple different masters along the way, and while I was learning through my graduate programs and did my PhD, I took a specialization in research and data analysis. So that enabled me to uh, I guess, learn a lot of the things that a traditional data scientist would through a non-traditional pathway. Um, and so I'm able to pull, manipulate, analyze data, and solve problems regardless of the industry. So I'm kind of industry agnostic as far as those skills go. Um, and then I work largely in education now doing those things. So my skills are put to use in the field that I have expertise in, a lot of expertise in, and so I'm able to inform a lot of education policy, which is kind of a fulfillment of my goal of improving the field of education um, through utilizing my skills. So that's kind of my background and path to where I am.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So where are you actually at now?
Sure. So I work for a company called MichiganVirtual. Uh, they are an online education entity that serves kind of the Great Lakes area. And not only are they like a K-12 entity, but they also offer professional learning opportunities for adults and stuff. Not just educators; they do offer other courses and stuff for other professions. But so they have kind of like a professional learning side, and then a K through 12 education side. And then in addition to that, they have they're unique in that they're large enough and they do enough good work that they have a research and innovation wing. And so I work for the research innovation wing. It's called the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute. And what we do is we do education research. Some of it on students in our platform, some of it with the school districts that we have access to, some of it with the partners that we work with in online learning communities. We're part of the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance. It's like 30, no, more than that, probably like 50 something members strong of like large online learning communities across the United States. And we'll share data with each other and do research, like data sets with each other, and uh, do stuff like that. And we'll, of course, we'll run pilots with different programs and stuff. And so I handle a lot of that type of work for them, doing ad hoc data analysis or scraping data from different things or running research studies. You do a lot of varied projects for them in the field of research and data science.
That's fantastic. So when you guys do your research, like what do you focus on improving that education? Like, is it the system? Is it the curriculum?
Sure. So number one, it depends on, of course, it depends on the goal of the research and who's funding it. So if it's government funding, that there's some type of agenda there, that we're trying to see if a certain practice has some type of benefit or whatever. I will say at the institute, we're mainly concerned with innovation. So we're not trying to like iterate on a core product. We're trying to see like what's 5 steps down the road, not what is the next thing. So for a real good example is, so when I started work there, it's like the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. um, I I sat in on a meeting, that the innovation wing had with a consulting firm. And we were already talking AI in education then before ChatGPT was a thing. So we were already dipping our toes into, using AI to generate synthetic profiles for students to try to identify at-risk students for a couple different things on the platform, all kinds of different things. So, everybody in education now, and it's February 2024, they're all running around with their heads cut off trying to develop policy or get out in front of stuff. We've been there. We've been there since 2021. Uh, and we actually have had and are still are compiling a growing list of resources for educators. Um, a couple of states just recently pushed some policy forward. Washington, I think, was one of the first ones, and they cited a lot of our literature as some of their founding pieces for their AI policy. So uh, we're we're really concerned as far as the research goals are, being thought leaders and innovators in the space of education.
Yeah. In what ways? Sorry, this is totally taking me a left turn in my thought process. Honestly, what I originally
Oh,
want to
you're
talk
good.
about.
You're good.
Yeah, no, I love this because again, my I have a 13-year-old
Hmm.
who's somewhat into technologies, the STEM programs. I have an 11-year-old, and watching them kind of go through these STEM programs and see the education system trying to enrich the engineering, and the sciences and whatnot. And I've also seen a lot of their teachings kind of, when I see it, be kind of archaic and just outdated, or doing the best they can, but you're like, well, this is just not today's technology. And so knowing your research there, like looking at AI specifically, like what aspects, how does that AI intertwine within that education? Because we know ChatGPT, and read the news about using that to write papers, and people losing their grammar skills to being able to communicate and write. But there's also a lot of ways to leverage AI to be more productive and efficient. Um, do you mind, if you can, like talk about some of those ways of how you guys see leveraging AI to enrich that learning process?
Yeah. So that's definitely something that I've spoken on a lot and researched, and I mean I'm pretty entrenched in that area. Um, so yeah, I definitely get the concern there. It's like, you don't want to declaw and take away the teeth from the hunters essentially by providing them the food, uh, and
Yeah.
uh, but at the same time, ignoring it and sticking your head in the sand. is a grave mistake, I feel like, and especially in the field of education already. We all have been, I assume, have been through the public education system in some form or fashion. Okay, you're nodding your head, so yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when we went through school, okay, I'm 32. I assume you guys are roughly the same age. So, overhead projectors and VCRs and stuff. That's what they were rolling in the classroom. Uh, and that stuff had been around since 80s, 70s. Like
Yeah.
education is always the last industry to adopt anything.
Hmm.
And part of it is because, uh, in my opinion, part of it is because of a lot of nationalized things, and it takes forever to get any large scale change approved because you want to see, and it makes sense to a certain extent. You want evidence to make a decision. Well, it takes
Yeah.
time to gather that evidence, and in the meantime, you also don't want to do harm to the system. I mean, it's extremely multifaceted on why that happens, but uh, education is extremely resistant to adopting new technology. When the graphing calculators and stuff came out, it's like, math
Yeah.
teachers are, holy shit, this is the devil. We can't allow this. I'm sure we all heard, well, you're not always going to have a calculator. Well, bullshit, I ain't. Like, I got one, I got like 20 sitting right next to me, at any given time. And so that type of argument is invalid. And I feel
Hmm.
like it's the same thing for AI. You are going to have it. Yeah, I don't think it's going away unless there are extreme world changes like nuclear destruction.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
EMP.
going. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so to act like they're not going to have access to it, and even e- still staying within this niche, but also kind of going off just a little bit. Um, it's the same as saying, as a coder, you're never going to have a reference to by you. But yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? Like,
Stack Overflow allowed us all to graduate.
yeah, I mean, like that kind of stuff is ridiculous. And to act like, I mean, there is merit to learning a skill where it's you can do it quickly, but a lot of that comes from applying things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, like, memorizing it for memorizing sake is ridiculous.
What
And
I think one of the things that I like to probably tell my engineers the most, and this is probably going to get so much flack, but I think the biggest difference between a junior engineer and a senior engineer is one knows how to Google better than the other.
I think that goes with any non-tech too. Like I have people ask me questions all the time. It's like, well, let me Google that for you while you're asking the question.
yeah,
But I think to your turn is like AI too. Like I think about it like, okay, they can write my papers. I think of it from a research efficient again speed, right? If I'm researching on a specific topic or trying to find content to a topic, I'm not going to a big list of Britannica books now that are potentially outdated, or I'm not spending hours googling where I can have it coming to me within say 30 minutes and still it is like the efficiency of getting the data and then sifting through the data to whatever paper or whatever I'm writing. I see a huge efficiency and pro into that AI aspect.
yeah. It, I mentioned in some of my pretext answers to some of the questions, and it's something that I came up with talking to some Michigan educators, specifically some technology leaders there, and one was the term library 3.0. So, uh, library 1.0, we had the card catalog and all that stuff, and the
Dewey Decimal
librarian,
System.
yeah, and the librarian helped you find what you need, and then you had to go through the book, and then you wrote down stuff on your little note card about the source, and then you had all that stuff that we probably did in middle and high school and in our writing classes, composition or whatever, and then when the internet came around, and Google started being the main usage of things, like probably like 2009 or
Mm-hmm.
so. uh, then that would be essentially library 2.0. We had powerful search engines where we had access to an enormous amount of information, and but at that time you didn't have as much assistance, but you had access to a lot more information. Well, now we've kind of bridged the gap, and we have an access to an enormous amount of information, but then also someone who can help us with that information. So that's where we are here, is that not only can it tell us, well, yeah, I've got the 10 best sources for this topic right here, but also here's a synthesis of all these things, so you don't
Yeah.
have to read them cover to cover. And that type of thing is it's invaluable. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
So are you
I
guys running off of the latest AI models? Like, are you running GPT-4 for trying to like work with the research of this, or?
Sure. Okay. So our AI lab, uh, we have a lot of different things going on. So one component is we are actively running professional development with education districts to familiarize uh, teachers and administrators with the tools that exist. That's one big thing, because everybody's scared of the unknown. Like, it's showing them what it's capable of and how they can utilize it is big. Okay. So that's kind of one area that we're working in. And then the other is kind of like the testing of the tools themselves. We have ongoing internal projects where, I mean, before there was a paid version of Chat GPT, we had it's really cool how our organization kind of sprang up with our AI lab, is because it started when Chat GPT came out, and it was just me and a couple other people. I didn't even start it. I was kind of messing around with stuff on the side, and then a couple other guys were like, "Hey, have you heard of this? And we've been using it to do this." It's like, "Oh yeah, cool." And we started a little Teams group, and then we are like, "Yeah, we've used it to do this, and we found this." And so it was a lot of, we were putting together anecdotal data and stuff. Um, and then it kind of evolved into this like 15-person group where we're constantly uh, like entrenched and surrounded by experimentation with things. One person is using it for this, and we record a lot of it. And then we also have purposeful, like I like experimentation sprints. I wouldn't necessarily say design sprints, but we're similar to like a hackathon or whatever, like where we sit down and we're like, this is what we're going to be trying to use it for, and we're also going to look for ways to break it, and or how things could go wrong, and then we write up, this is what went well, this is what went wrong, this is how it could be improved, this is etc. So we've been doing that internally, kind of from both a student side and an educator's side, since since like October of last no, October of 2022. Yeah, so we've been doing some things like that. So um so like it's right now, yeah, we got people with uh version 4 GPT. We got people that are so that's the other thing is, um, we as an organization, we don't fully support one thing over another. So some people, pay. So we get a technology stipend from our company, which is pretty cool. Um,
Nice.
and we also get a continuous learning stipend. Like, they'll pay a certain amount for us to take classes and stuff. If So that's really cool. And so some people have GPT 4.0. Some people are paying for like the Gemini. Some people, like me, I have, or I used to have, a couple different versions of some research ones um, that I use. Like Illicit was one that I used frequently for research, and I have GPT 4, and then like we also have some people that have for different purposes like Midjourney accounts and stuff. Like it's just however people want to spend their money, you know,
Well,
that's
then
there for them to do.
I think it's kind of cool because then you'll have multiple AI engines producing information. I'm sure you guys all kind of work together too and aggregate that information together and be like, all right, I hear a lot of in AI the hallucinations. Where
Yeah.
AI is just kind of assuming bits of data, and it's got to be intriguing to see it from these different sources and be like, okay, what really has been hallucinated? My air quotes there, or what's factual from what you guys get.
There's a lot of especially when you're looking uh when you're inputting information, that's where I found a lot of when you're inputting information and asking it uh to summarize or synthesize from information that you're inputting, or you're asking it to reference a specific outside document. That's
Mm.
when I recognize a lot of hallucination the most across kind of all platforms. When you just ask it a general question, and like I feel like it does that pretty well. But I've had just when it was in its infancy, I remember uh, trying to put in some spreadsheet data, and I was like, "Oh, dude, this is so awesome!" It can analyze some of this stuff, and then I started reading what it gave me, and it's like, well, after the first three columns, it just started assuming a lot of things,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, "This is not right." I was like, "This is crazy." And if I had just been like, "Oh yeah, this is fine," and started writing about what I had analyzed through there, it's like that'd have been way off.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, even I was actually just messing with Google's Gemini earlier today, and boy, like sometimes it will connect to your Google Docs seamlessly and be like, yeah, I can code this document via this rule set, and it's awesome, and it does stuff to the level of any moderately skilled qualitative researcher. Like it can code an interview transcript and according to your research questions, and it'll do that once, and then when you ask it to do it the second time and combine the results, has a seizure, and it just
Yeah, yeah.
like it's just so like it's so hit or miss with a lot of those things.
Yeah. Well, and I've experienced that myself. Software engineering, a big tool in the AI is that GitHub Copilot everyone's talking about.
Yep.
And you hear a lot of the marketing or the business like, oh, this will outwork all your developers, and potentially like, hey, you don't need this field as much. And I've tried to do some like in depth, like, okay, generate this code for me. A big
Hmm.
chunk of it. Kind of like I said, complicated, integrated, and then it divvies out a bunch of code, and from face value, you're like, oh, this is fantastic, until you start getting into, devil in the details and looking at specific libraries or some of the calculations. You're like, hold on here. It almost is going to take me more work, more time to go through what it was generated to proofread it and to modify than it would be for me to write it from scratch at times.
Yeah.
I I have found, uh, and I will also be the first to say, between the three of us here, I am the least skilled at coding, 100%, no doubt. So
Yeah, yeah,
I, but I have used AI mainly uh, to like I will put in some bones and have it fill out things, or I'll have it check my code. And
hmm
it does pretty good with those. But as far as generating large amounts, like you said, Brian,
yeah.
yeah, you have to go back and it's like, oh, oh, oh. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, and I can only imagine it's the same, like say, when you're writing a paper or trying to bring that data in some specific. My
Well,
wife, she
okay,
works
but
that's. Go ahead.
I think there's a piece you're missing there, and part of the way that it's being used is I think not in the way that people are expecting it to be used. So like with GitHub Copilot, it's really good at replicating things that you've already done. So like if you're using GitHub Copilot to build out an interface, like let's say you have like a a shopping cart interface, and you've got products, you've got customers, and you've already got products built out. If you have it in the same namespace as customers, GitHub Copilot, like you can literally go in there and write the first like line of that code, and it will literally build the rest of that
Yeah, yeah,
interface for you. And I think that's where like the most value comes from it, because that AI is kicking in and being like, I see what's over here.
yeah,
I got you.
yeah.
Don't fucking worry about it. And
Mhm.
like, I think that's going to be the key to AI is, a junior engineer, they're going to go in there, they're going to try to learn how to use this tool, they're going to learn to write code with it, but they're going to learn it the way that that code is being spit out, instead of being able to go back like a senior engineer and be like, okay, well, I know that's not going to fucking work out, so I'm going to rewrite that section of it. And I think that's kind of like how we are going to set ourselves apart as engineers, but also why we have to figure out how to teach these junior engineers, because as AI and other things start to come in, we're going to be like, okay, we're going to start seeing major issues if we don't teach these kids how to use this.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting evolution too. I like I said, it's all new, and Nick, like you're talking about, and there's been a bunch of companies that have used AI in the past. I think it's become, I wouldn't say new, but more readily available to the market. And you don't have that focus, and where hardware has come and the cloud computing perspective. You talk about data analysis and data scientists. I could imagine the impact of this ability to aggregate this large language model and how that's going to revolutionize that field in general between what it was in 2019, what it'll be in 2025. Yeah.
I would say my response to that is very similar to Aaron's because uh I mean even a basic engineer can analyze data that they have access to, or they can scrape data and then analyze it. They can do some multi-step processes. Um, Knowing what's the appropriate analysis type for your data set, understanding even understanding the problem. Like it's you gotta, and that's where like the separation between the senior engineer and the junior engineer is like understanding the problem and like the use case that this has. Like that is what's going to separate. Those are going to be the data scientists that keep their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because otherwise, yeah, I can. I mean, and I've done it. Um, but I also have to know the right questions to ask still. But like, I can go. We use Qualtrics a lot for distributing surveys and stuff like that, and I can go back in from a data set, and I can hook up uh, GPT there, and I can be like, hey, I want to know this. I'll get it. And then I'll go do the same thing on my own and it's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like it's able to do that by just asking and it saves a lot of time. However, um, if like looking for underlying relationships or specific latent variables that may exist in data sets, a lot of different things that go beyond the basics of really data science and data analysis, you have to know what questions to ask and what is this data going to be used for. You have to be able to critically think, and I knew this was going to come up when we were talking. I knew it just because like that's the thing is you know we still have to be able to think, and that's a
Yeah.
concern as people think that AI was going to remove people's ability to think. And honestly, I feel like it is actually more of a weeding out tool because it becomes readily apparent who it is using AI as an enabler to go further faster, and who is using it as a crutch because they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And I have experience with that, so I also. I mentioned this before, but I also teach doctoral research, and this past semester, uh, I wanted to test out using AI tools with my students and see, you know, how well they did and how far and fast they went compared to the other semesters that I've taught. And they did go further faster for sure. but you could definitely tell the difference in the students that, I mean, it's almost like you kind of what you would expect. You got some papers, and these weren't even necessarily papers. They were more like questions that needed answers with bullet points. But these you would get some that were clearly copied and pasted, and you know they just took what Chat GPT or whatever they used, if they used Bard, which now doesn't exist anymore. But they would just copy and paste what it was, and they wouldn't actually think about, well, can I actually, because it's like a proposal generating class, a research proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be able to leave that class with a almost, not quite, but almost a valid proposal that they're then going to work with their advisor with to finalize. So it has to be a valid study. They can't just say, well, I'm going to collect this data. Okay, well, does that data even exist? Do you have access to that population? Do
Yeah.
you like, is it a protected population? Where are you, do you know all these people that you're going to be your research participants? All these other things, and it's like, well, you say you're going to measure self-efficacy. Well, what are you using to measure that? And like, Chat GPT or whatever will, at least at the time, would say use surveys. Well, surveys ain't cutting it.
Yeah.
What is it? What is the tool that collects the data that measures self-efficacy?
Mm-hmm.
You need to know that. And it just became abundantly clear that yes, it got them further faster, but there was a huge line in the sand of who actually would draw those lines between what AI was helping with them with, and then they could connect the dots to where they needed to be. And like that, yeah, I feel like honestly, it's kind of a big differentiator when you start changing your assessment tasks for the students. Uh, it becomes abundantly clear who knows what and who
Yeah.
has each different type of skill. Um, because it's just you end up just reading outputs from Chat GPT that are vaguely centered around somebody's topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm huge with the mindset technology helps elevate our thinking or elevate what we can execute on compared to, years in the past. And exactly what you said, I love because it kind of pushes that point a little more. Right? Those can use it as a crutch and just copy paste. They don't know what they're doing with the new tech. And those are going, hey, how can we leverage this new technology to come up with a better, more thought out, you know, response for you or submission for that. You hope that builds upon in years ago. And I assume, and your opinion here, I'm curious in your thought, what's that like from the instructor's side too? Because, not only are these students leveraging, these AIs and technology, but I assume the professors and they have to learn how to leverage that too to give you a more elevated question or task. And then the left and right hand are both raising at the same time, utilizing this technology. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and I would say it's kind of a crucible moment for teachers here, because we've said for years, and if you're familiar at all with the field of education, you've probably heard this, but uh, we need to move away from being the sage on the stage and becoming the guide on the side. Um, because the sage on the stage, that's like the boring Bueller, Bueller, Bueller teacher,
Mm-hmm.
where they're the keeper of knowledge. You listen to what they say. What they say is on the test, and then all you learn from that class is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You don't you didn't learn really any applicable skill. You didn't learn about why the mitochondria does what it does, why how cells even make power. You don't remember that. You don't even remember how you get energy from food and how the mitochondria are responsible for that. Like, you don't remember any of that. Like, and some of those things are more or less important depending on what's important to you in your life and your career. But some of those things, like understanding uh, macromolecules like fats, proteins, nucleic acids, uh, and carbohydrates, like understanding how those are digested and stuff in your body and what they're made out of, that's useful knowledge for everyone.
Mhm.
And that's like a biology one standard. And who remembers that? I mean, I do, but like, I mean, not too many people do, but yet that's highly applicable knowledge because like one of the largest health problems in our country is obesity, and then but we got heart disease and stuff too. If people understand what they're putting in their bodies, um, you know, maybe it could help. Uh, but that type of thinking, that mentality of the teacher being a facilitator of learning is what it's a principle of constructivism, which has been preached for years about how we got to do stuff. We got to involve kids in active learning. They need to have real world applications, all that stuff. We hear that all the time. Yeah, it's great. We got to do it. We got to do it. We got to do it. But nobody does it. Okay. Like, I mean, and part of it is because uh, there is some schools teachers don't have autonomy. They have to stick with what they're supposed to teach and the materials that they're supposed to use. Some of it's out of their hands.
Yeah.
Some of it, you're limited to the materials that you have. And by that, I mean, like, the teacher spends their own money on doing things for the class.
Yep.
That's shitty.
I
Like,
see that in our elementary school. My kids, like the teachers reach out and ask us to just help with
yeah,
basic materials,
yeah.
and I don't expect a teacher to go and spend their own money, which they don't get much of doing their job.
But they do. They
They
do so
do,
much that
yeah,
it's a taxable. I mean, it's on your tax forms.
yeah,
Were you an educator and you spent
thanks,
your own money? Like, okay,
yeah,
deduction. Like,
yeah,
uh, so that's another reason. And then I'd say the other reason, besides like kind of teacher student ratios that can sometimes be just crazy, um, is there's such a vast amount of content that some teachers and courses are supposed to cover, and the ability distribution of the students is so varied. And because of certain policies, no child left behind, uh, you have to teach to the lowest person in your group. Therefore, anybody who's at the middle of the pack or the front of the pack moves at the pace of the person at the back.
they're twiddling their thumbs in the
Yeah.
back.
And uh and then I'd say probably a lesser reason, which a lot of people think it's a larger reason, but I honestly think it's a lesser reason. Some teachers get lazy. I mean, they just do. We all know it. There's the gym teacher. It's the gym teacher that teaches history that always puts in a video and then goes back to his computer and sits there and draws up football plays. So uh, there's that whole thing too. But I mean, really, a lot of those teachers that do that once were teachers that really cared about their students learning. And then that got to that point where it's just like, holy shit, like they're just beat down and they're like, I can't, it doesn't matter what I do,
Yeah,
so I
spending
can't.
half their salary on their class every year.
Yeah. Uh, so, so those are some big barriers on why it's not done yet. Now we have this amazing opportunity with amazing technology that can really help you differentiate and take a lot of that administrative workload away from teachers. I mean, I've taught some workshops to some teachers about how to easily differentiate content uh, I mean, because sadly, there's, I mean, when I taught high school, it's been a while, but even when I taught high school, and it's worse now, there are kids that come in there that can't hardly read.
Mhm.
And what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
And but you can take a lesson plan that you've drawn up, or even just a topic, and say, I want a lesson on this. I mean, and then say, but I want you to differentiate it for third grade and fifth grade reading levels and generate materials that are also at that reading level. So therefore, you're doing 50 seconds of extra work to generate something that the lowest kid in your class can competently complete, and you can still speak to the rest of the class.
Yeah.
Uh, in addition to, there are AI platforms completely devoted to educational materials and experiences. One of them that comes to mind is a platform called Knowledge, Knowledge. But they can create like HTML5 things that you can embed, and it's like even if you're running a free Google Classroom for your students, I mean, you can provide all kinds of unique, highly unique interactives for your students when you can't give them super hands-on things. Um, that type of replication of a lab experience, I mean, is better than filling out a worksheet.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Well, in your
yeah.
idea there of leaving no kid behind, the thought, you have a spectrum of abilities and learning of a specific topic. And the idea just kind of popped in my head as you were talking about it is like the ability to allow the instructor to build a 100, 200, 300 level curriculum on that topic for within your class of seventh graders,
Yep.
to where each kid is still learning at their pace they're set, they began at and they can continue at. So they leave that year better than when they came in. But they also got the complexity they needed for themselves, learning whatever specific topic it was for that class. Like it's the AI being leveraged there, like I said, generate multiple work plans for those students.
Well, I mean, I think there's a broader piece of that too that maybe you guys are kind of overlooking in it. It could be used even at the corporate level like that. I
Oh
mean, if
yeah.
you think about it, like you could literally differentiate between teaching someone from the product team how to do this, someone from the engineering team, and someone from the C level, which we obviously know has to be way dumbed down. So, it's like you could use this in business the exact same way. And like, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is a lot of the stuff that Nick's talking about can be utilized in the engineering industry. Like you can literally pick up a lot of these concepts and literally plop them down on anything you got to learn in the engineering industry.
Yep. I let's see. One of the things I said, and when I was looking through some of the topics that we may talk about was uh, I already said the library 3.0 concept, but next was AI as an expert, AI as an interviewer, designer, and evaluator. And what I mean by that is you can, just like you said, Aaron, you can use that to differentiate by interacting with artificial intelligence in a multitude of roles. For instance, I'm going to nerd out a little bit here,
We
but
love nerding out. You're
uh,
welcome to nerd out here.
so I'm a forever dungeon master of Dungeons and Dragons. So I one of the first ways in which I was utilizing AI frequently, yeah, there you go, was generating scenarios, descriptions, stat blocks, and stuff for my monsters and stuff. But then I thought of uh, instead of having I want this, give me this. I said my characters are this. What would be cool? And then it tells me what it thinks based on the information. So that's where you can utilize AI as the expert. Like you say AI, hey, given what I'm telling you, what do you think is best here? And then you can also flip the script and say, ask, like, it could be used for studying or any kind of thing, but like you can say, pretend that you are an interviewer for a Fortune 500 company, and I am interviewing for X role, and it'll ask you questions. Okay, and you can
Oh, that is cool.
utilize, yeah, you gotta flip, you gotta think outside the box and kind of
Yeah.
flip the script there. And then the same thing. It's like if you're wondering, how am I going to evaluate this program? How do I know if my product is fulfilling its goals? Well, ask AI to be an evaluator and evaluate your product, and it'll start asking you all these questions. And if you're like, oh shit, I forgot about that, better go measure
Yeah.
that. That type of thing is like, just like Aaron said, you can take it and just spin it and plop it down. It an almost infinite number of ways.
Okay, so if both of you guys are, oh, that was a weird echo.
Yeah, you got some echo. The almighty Aaron.
Uh, anyway, if you guys are excited about that, I'm going to nerd out for a second on something that's really off topic. But if you guys are excited about that kind of concept, I have to get you into the other project I'm working on. Brian, you know what it is, but Nick, I'm pretty sure you know Mythos Forge. But anyway, so we have a feature where you build a character, right? And you input all the information about your character and like what they look like, how they act, that kind of stuff. We actually feed all that information into the OpenAI API and actually allow you to have a conversation with that AI based on your character information that you've put in. So, like, if you tell them they're from a world and they do this for a living, like, let's say they're an adventurer, they will literally talk to you like they're an adventurer in that world, and you can ask them anything about it.
That's
That's cool.
awesome.
That's cool.
Do you can it fetch to outside? So I'm thinking for myself here. So I have like a enormous compendium, a world anvil. If you're familiar with what that is, it's like a wiki for all of my campaign content. So like, I don't know, can it reference all that as context?
Not yet, and World Anvil is probably our direct competitor. So
Oh,
damn you, Nick. No, but eventually, and that's, I mean, what no company gets better without a little competition. But anyway, and that's the thing is like the value of the sources that you feed it also determine how that works. And I mean that's AI in general. So it's those training modules, and that's one thing that any AI needs to help it grow. And that's obviously something we're going to do eventually. It's just me and two other guys working on it right now, so it's kind of small. But that's the more information you can give it, the better. And that's, I mean, that's when you're training people to actually do a job or to do something, that the more information you give it, the better. And that's really where AI could kind of come out of its shell. I mean, like that's the whole thing you were talking about. But yeah, the more you can feed into it at the beginning, the better. So at least in my experience.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
So to kind of bring it back around to what we actually do on the podcast. Not that I haven't enjoyed this conversation. Um, like me and Brown are probably both nerding out over all this, but like, how do we like to kind of when you were because you're kind of out of the industry, sorta now.
Yeah, I'm like adjacent. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in the industry, how did you utilize like your learning background to kind of, because I saw kind of what you did a little bit at Bridge, but like how have you used that to like kind of help bolster the teams, like because I mean the people we're reaching towards, the people we're trying to help are engineers in the field, engineering leaders. Like how can they utilize what you've utilized to kind of help them?
Sure. I mean, so there's a couple different things. So, uh, as far as like, I mean, because I specifically chose a pathway that kind of made me industry agnostic, so I could operate anywhere, and that's because I enjoy solving problems. And number one, I feel like when you're learning something, like, yes, it is possible to learn things that you might not have a lot of interest in, for various reasons, but ultimately you got to have some type of interest or objective for learning that's going to drive you. And if it's not there, you probably need to get out of the field. um and uh you know even though it's like a good paying field and whatever, for a lot of different people, I mean, I'd say you're kind of hamstringing your team by doing that. And so you got to have some type of vested interest. And then if motivate, even if you're interested, if motivation is kind of a factor on upping your skills, um, kind of putting yourself into a corner is another way. So involving yourselves in projects that force you to learn is another great way. So if you're a junior engineer or whatever, asking to be a part of a project uh, that's you feel like is honestly a little bit more than you can handle, that's actually a good way to learn. Um, so trial by fire type of thing, and as long uh, as long especially if it's an important project, because then if you don't learn, then not only did you fail your learning objective, but you might lose your job. So nothing like a little bit of pressure to make you perform. um, so those two things, kind of in combination, uh, are how I've kind of pushed myself to learn and perform at a different level. Um, and and then kind of like at an adjacent way of looking at things too, uh, is if you feel like you're kind of, we say this, you guys say this, everybody says this, drinking from the fire hose.
I
If
hate
you
that
feel,
fucking saying.
yeah, everybody says. So if you feel like that's you, then one of the easiest things is just to start connecting where you can with what you already know. So that's it's actually a very fundamental principle from the book, How People Learn, which is about how people learn. So that is actually like it's truly a key component. Is people learn best when either they're teaching themselves or someone else is teaching them, but when they're able to connect with what they're trying to learn with something they already know. And if there's too much disconnect, it's very difficult to learn there. So that's why I said starting with something you're interested in or that has an objective that you want to achieve, because there's some things that I've learned that I don't have an interest in, but I wanted the outcome. I
Yeah.
wanted the outcome. And so it's a necessary thing. Like, learning to fight. There were so those of you who didn't know, like, I used to be a professional fighter. um I there were days where it's like, I don't want to get hit in the face today. Like, I didn't want it. Like, I went home, I was hurt, I didn't like it, but I wanted the outcome. I wanted to be a fighter, and it's like, well, then that's something that you have to do. Get good, bro. Don't get
Yeah.
hit. So, uh, it,
Bob and weave, bob and weave.
yeah,
I mean,
die.
I don't. I don't know that I can say that I know anyone that wants to get hit in the face every day, but
There are some times where it can be an enjoyable experience. I would say on more of a cathartic level, not so much of a like a masochistic level. Like, I don't enjoy the
Yeah.
pain.
maybe
It's
that's why I've never been a fighter. I don't know.
uh, but yeah,
Oh,
like that the objective, like you got to have some type of tied interest, and then once you connect that with what you're wanting to learn, it helps motivate and whatnot. But yeah, that's what I would say has helped me kind of operate in various niches given my skill set.
well, I mean, that's pretty much how I built my career. I mean, it's like I can't count how many times in the last 18 years that somebody was like, "Hey, can you do this?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I can." And then they turn around, I'm like, "Oh shit, I don't know how to do this. I guess I can figure it out." So, and I mean, Brian comes from a more traditional, like, he has a degree, and it's like my degree was in 3D modeling and animation, so, and it was from ITT Tech, so I was fucked from the beginning. So it's like I pretty much anything. I had one class in HTML4 transitional, so obviously that's old as fuck. And like I don't even like. I started out in design work. I was doing graphic design work, and then like all of a sudden, I'm coding shit on MySpace and stuff like that, and then I'm like, fuck, I can make money doing this. Damn it! And now it's 18 years, and I'm like, fuck, I hate this. So it's like whatever. But being able to learn and like having something to strive for every day. And I mean, like, I've tried to adopt this in my everyday life. And I mean, there are some days where this obviously doesn't happen, but if I'm not learning something new every day, then that feels wrong to me. Luckily, when I have a lot of different things that I'm working on outside of work and outside of the kids, it's a little bit easier to do that. Because I mean, when you have multiple projects, you're constantly having to figure something out for one of those fucking projects. So you're constantly learning. So it's a little bit easier that way. Um, but I think I definitely had at least one more question. I don't know about Brian, and that's like, in your opinion, like I know earlier we mentioned, you get a technology stipend and then a learning stipend. I mean, obviously those are two definite advantages that you probably have at your position, and one that tech companies for a while were offering that kind of went out the window over the last year because everybody's fucking getting laid off. But are there other things that you could kind of look at whenever you're trying to find a new job or something like that that's going to show you that they're willing to invest in helping you learn?
Yeah. So I spent a little bit of time uh, in the time that from the time Bridge collapsed to when I started working for yeah same boat. So I spent a little bit of time job hunting, and one of the things that I would do uh, when I was looking at positions as I go look at employees' LinkedIn's and stuff that worked at those companies, and uh, you can see a lot of times are the is there a culture there of continuous learning by like are the people constantly telling you about what they do? That's a good indication that they're evolving and doing cool things. Are they posting on LinkedIn about a certification that they earned? That's an indication. Most people, I don't know many, but most people don't go around paying for like LinkedIn premium stuff unless their employer's doing it.
Yeah.
They don't go around uh, taking their time to learn a certification unless their employer is going to pay for it, or unless it's going to pay dividends down the road at their job. They will be rewarded for getting this
Well,
certification or
I,
whatever.
I've been there myself before. Like I work in Microsoft in the Azure cloud for many years, and trying to compare myself amongst the network and skill sets is it valuable to pay for this Azure certification out of my own pocket, which is $100 a pop at the moment. And then you go, do I really? What do I get from it? And part of it is not necessarily, I always hear the talk about certifications like, well, you're just memorizing questions, and eventually it becomes obsolete. And part of it too pushes yourself, but also like I like what you say. It shows to other people you're willing to learn.
Yeah.
I think that's a key. I see a lot of times when I'll get certain certs, and you get that little creditly,
Yeah, little
.com
badge.
badge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you see people in an update, and you're like, why would you put this out in the public? No one cares that I got this update. But exactly what you just said, like and I was just thinking this last week, honestly, where I was like,
Proficient in Microsoft Word level 2.
yeah, I was like, no one cares about. I'm just gonna keep going. It's not, in my opinion, for my skill set, it's not a big thing. But externally, people are seeing me going, oh, Brian's willing to learn. So you think of like future job, where I've gone the last few of my jobs has been through networking people I know. And I love what you just said there, Nick, about other people seeing that as Brian is someone who's willing to learn. Maybe he fits our culture and we bring him in. Like I'm thinking for other people too, like those that I might say like, oh, why would I share? I don't pat myself on the back. I'm not going to share this certification. And it's not necessarily to pat yourself on the back, but it's to show who you are, what type of learner you are, what type of professional you are that can play to your advantage down the road. And so you hope your LinkedIn, feed is nothing but people like, hi, I got this cert, I got that cert, I got this learning, I got that learning. Because we're all, like I said, you're learning something new every day. You're trying to. But I like that perspective.
Yeah, and it's not just that they're posting that they got a badge or a certification or something, but like that the company is updating, on what their employees are doing. That's another thing too. Um, I have found in my work experience that a company that is like proud of what their employees are doing will share out, and generally those tend to be good places to work where they allow their employees opportunities, room to grow,
Mhm.
and resources to grow. So that's another thing too, is that when the company itself is posting about some things that their employees are doing, not necessarily just, you know, uh, Microsoft did this. No, it's Brian Foster did this for Microsoft.
Yeah,
You know, so that type of thing is an indication to me that they care about their employees and what they contribute as well.
I like that.
Awesome. Brian, do you got any last questions for Nick?
To be honest, when we came into this podcast, and what we thought we'd talk about and what we did talk about were two different roads. Where Nick, I think you got to come back for a second round here shortly.
Hey, I'm fine with that, man.
Honestly, I have probably a dozen more questions down the education AI role, because ideating innovation, of just how to put that together, but also, we talk about the learning cycle. The whole point of the podcast initially was to talk about, engineers and recycling that learning, constantly keeping up, because we're such a changed set industry. Things are constantly changing. AI, particular, is totally revolutionizing how we all work right now. So it's just an evolution change. So no, I have a lot of particular questions specifically I would love to ask as well. I'm just going to save it for job security for our next episode.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think there's not only that, but I think getting maybe if we do have anybody listening to this, we can get some questions in, see if anybody's got questions for Nick and or us, and kind of see if maybe we can get some feedback on it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
Also, the helmet and the R2D2. It's way better than the elephant in his room. What the fuck?
Hey, it's the elephant in the baseball bat. There you go.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah. He said something about eating the rest of that fucking elephant. I don't know. It was a weird conversation. I think I edited that part out.
One bite
Like,
at a time.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. I've got
Initially
some
was a
weird.
whole walled canvas, and I just narrowed it down to just what's behind
See,
it.
I got the cool art. This one, and then the cyberpunk stuff and the Princess
Yeah.
Mononoke, and you've got a
Yeah.
half-eaten elephant. What the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah, I got my PRS Zach Myers guitar too. So
Hey! The Schecter's right there. Okay.
uh, no, but
Um,
thanks Nick for your time, man. This has been great. A lot
Yeah,
to
I
digest, to be honest.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I did mention, um, and I'll name drop again though for sure, that if anybody is looking for AI resources, look at what Michigan Virtual has been producing. Yes, I was a part of that, but also I live in Tennessee. My company is based in Michigan, and that's that Great Lakes area is what they do stuff in. I have personally offered to do things in and around my home county here in Tennessee because I so strongly believe in what they're doing. I'm not a salesman. Like I've gone out to these district leaders and been like, "Hey, we have these resources. Like I want to see you succeed. Like my kids go to school here, so
Yes.
like I have a vested interest in this area improving its education. Please check out these resources. Let us know. Like I believe in this as a former student of this area, so like I'm not shamelessly promoting it. I really think that they are good resources uh for educators and districts, and really anybody that has an interest in AI in the education field. um they're pretty good. But shameless self promotion too, I will be releasing a my own Nick GPT for consulting services in a couple of months. so so if you have research problems and questions and you want access to me in a bot version, then there you go.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Like, just fuck. I'm all about shameless self promotion. I mean, like, we'll fuck. We'll leave it in there. I don't give a damn. Whatever we can do to help, right? I mean, like, and
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. It's like this podcast, like, if me and Brian, we started it because I want to try to help people.
Oh
So I
yeah,
mean, definitely want to get you back so we can get some more stuff about learning. And I mean, even if it takes a couple of years for people to listen to this, maybe they'll get something out of it. So I really
sure,
appreciate you coming on, man.
absolutely. I enjoy my time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully somebody will listen eventually. And thanks. Yeah.